In this video, we talk about a potential fight between Conor McGregor and Charles Oliveira. Be sure you like and subscribe if you enjoy. So Conor McGregor has been tweeting and making a lot of posts towards Charles Oliveira and also to UFC saying, "I'm fighting for the lightweight belt next," which first of all is he's coming off of a huge injury, two back-to-back losses, and now I guess he's petitioning himself to fight for the belt. And he said Brazil versus Ireland too. Of course, how he fought Jose Aldo for the featherweight belt. Charles Oliveira seems like, well, he's interested and he's gonna accept. He would accept it, and of course it makes sense of how big of a draw Conor is and his biggest star in UFC history by far, and it would be huge for him to get that huge payday. But just the logistics of this fight just doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, I mean,
Obviously.
I guess it's possible considering that Conor McGregor didn't fight Charles Oliveira yet, and obviously he lost to Dustin Poirier twice, which is the guy who just lost to Oliveira. So it really doesn't make sense when you look at the rankings and where they match up and how Conor McGregor's been doing in the last couple of years. Well, he's ranked number 9 in the lightweight division right now, and if he fought Charles Oliveira, he'd literally be just jumping in line ahead of guys like Justin Gaethje and Islam Makhachev and these kind of guys that have been grinding and are on win streaks and have been winning and deserve title shots. So it really doesn't make sense right now for Conor McGregor to fight Charles Oliveira, but I mean they're both obviously interested because Oliveira wants that money fight. Everyone does. So it would obviously be the biggest fight of his career, and yeah, Conor as well. He wants the title. So I mean they both want it, but for the UFC to make that, I feel like it would kind of delegitimize the lightweight title because I mean he's really not been doing the best in the last couple of years, and he hasn't been active. And when he has, he didn't come up victorious against Dustin Poirier for the past 2 fights, and obviously had that injury. So yeah, I don't think that it should happen, and I don't think it will. But I mean, who knows?
For the UFC, of course, it would be a good business move and financially to, of course, match up Conor McGregor, because whenever McGregor fights, no matter what result he's coming off of, it's always going to be a ginormous fight.
It's intelligent business.
And could you imagine Conor coming off those big losses and then just comes back at ring number 9, jumps the line, and then beats Charles Oliveira?
Da 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 da! It's the motherfucking deal, double G.
Like
Yeah,
the
imagine.
state of the division and even the UFC would be crazy. And yeah, it doesn't make sense, especially with a guy like Justin Gaethje, who's just fought Michael Chandler in a huge war, and now
Fight of the
he's
year.
been asking for the title shot for some time, even before the Chandler fight happened. So for him to just jump the line and have a Gaethje and of course Islam, who's been making up the ranks and is gonna fight Neil Dariush next in fight night. And yeah, it wouldn't make sense. But of course, business wise, it always makes sense with McGregor.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm just kind of interested to see, not even necessarily against Oliveira for sure, but just to see how he comes back regarding that huge injury he got to his leg, and if he's able to come back the same, if he's able to be improved, if he's able to use that leg as much, and just how it would work out pretty much with him coming back to the UFC.
Yeah, and even like I feel like this might not even be like the biggest fight Conor could make because there's still huge fights. Obviously, his rivalry with Dustin Poirier would be huge for a fourth fight, even though those last 2 fights weren't in Conor's favor. But I mean, they're both coming off losses, and I mean, Conor McGregor going straight into a title shot versus Charles Oliveira doesn't really make sense. And I feel like if they were to do that, they'd probably want Conor to match up against someone else first, maybe like a Michael Chandler or one of these guys, maybe a Islam Makhachev, which would be a huge fight, especially considering you know the relationship Islam and Khabib had, and obviously the rivalry between Conor McGregor and Khabib, probably one of the biggest rivalries in UFC history. So that would be a huge fight as well. Um, Depending on how the UFC promotes it. So I don't think it makes sense, especially to go straight into a Charles Oliveira. Maybe if he has a fight before, against maybe Dustin Poirier, maybe Michael Chandler, who knows? But it just doesn't make sense for him to go straight into a Charles Oliveira fight. And Charles Oliveira has been doing amazing recently. And he's on a huge win streak, has the most submission wins in UFC history and the most finishes. So he's a huge veteran. He's been in the organization for 11 years. So I mean he's a huge veteran, and he's been super active, so it doesn't really make sense to match him up with Conor McGregor right now.
And also touching on big fights Conor has other than Charles Oliveira is also a trilogy with Nate Diaz would be huge. And of course their
Yeah.
first two fights were massive. Nate Diaz of course getting the huge upset in the first fight against Conor. Conor just coming off of his massive win against Jose Aldo where he managed to knock him out in 13 seconds. And through that momentum he was massive star, exploded even bigger than he was before that fight, and then fought Nate Diaz, and Nate Diaz managed to get the upset against him, which was huge, and then gained all that hype, and then leading towards the second fight was an amazing fight and was super popular, and fans have been wanting to see a trilogy fight for them for a couple years, or pretty much since that second fight happened.
Yeah.
And I guess that would be also another good business option and entertaining fight for Conor to have. And it's pretty much always there, which is another benefit of that. That fight's always possible, especially with Nate kind of not always, like, he's not really in the title picture. So he would pretty much always be available to fight.
Yeah, and especially with Conor's new revealed size, where he's been bulking up and looks like he's 190 pounds right now. So he could definitely
Yeah.
compete at welterweight. But obviously he might.
This guy TKOs people. When I knock people out, they don't fucking move. They're not. Who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that?
Might return at lightweight. Who knows? But welterweight's definitely a possibility. And if you were to fight at welterweight, the fight that makes sense is obviously Nate Diaz, or maybe even Dustin Poirier if he decides to move up to that weight. But it doesn't seem like he is going to just yet. But I mean, this matchup's definitely going to be really interesting. Obviously, we have Charles Oliveira's grappling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is such a high level, and he's just been dominating everyone. And it seems like if he gets you on the ground, man, he's one of the most dangerous guys in the sport. So, yeah,
Hmm.
it's going to be interesting to see how this fight would play out. And obviously, Conor would try to stay on his feet and strike and go toe-to-toe with Charles because Charles doesn't seem to have the best head movement, but at the same time, he has some of the greatest grappling out there.
Yeah, and both guys have been in UFC for a pretty long time now, of course, especially Charles entering the UFC when he was 20 years old, and he's a huge vet, fought the likes of like Tony Ferguson, he beat Kevin Lee, beat Dustin Poirier recently, Michael Chandler for the belt originally, and he's fought tons of guys on his come up towards the top and finally reached it. And now, if you were to fight a guy like Conor, both of these guys are so highly accomplished. Conor being double weight world champion with both featherweight and lightweight, and that fight it would be a massive fight and super entertaining fight, and to see how their styles would clash. Oliveira with his jiu-jitsu and Conor with his kickboxing and also boxing style. And yeah, it would be an interesting fight, but I just definitely don't see it happening, especially with where things are at right now in the current rankings and Conor with his injury, and who knows when he's gonna come back, who's gonna fight back. But Conor also definitely has a lot of other options.
As you said, the rankings don't really make sense. Charles Oliveira is the top 5 pound for pound fighters in the UFC in general right now, and he's been super dominant. And he's just been on a roll, but who knows? Conor McGregor, obviously the first double champ in UFC history, and is the biggest pay-per-view draw. So if they want to match him up against Charles Oliveira, it will definitely be a good matchup. But right now, when you look at the rankings, you don't want to undervalue the legitimacy of the belt, and it just wouldn't be a good look for the UFC if they were to make a match like this right now. So yeah, if Conor gets a win, then it would definitely make sense. But right now, just doesn't seem like it's in the works. It doesn't seem like it would make sense right now. But I mean, as we said, they're both huge veterans. Conor, of course, having amazing wins over the likes of Jose Aldo, Nate Diaz, amazing performance against Eddie Alvarez, Chad Mendes, Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway, and yeah, he's a great fighter, super technical, super unique in his striking and creative. So it would be interesting to see how that fight would go, especially on the feet, considering Oliveira's newly developed striking skills. So yeah, it would definitely be interesting to see how that would go, and yeah, it would be an exciting match.